Does Kenya have one of the deadliest roads on earth, or some of the deadliest roads on earth? Stay with me for more on this topic. But before we dig deep into issues driving in Kenya for returnees, welcome to Kisumu, friends. I'm sure what you're watching is a little unusual, and I'll explain to you how we got to this point where we had to literally send a border person to get us some diesel to just let us get out of this parking lot into the next gas station. Kisumu, for those who are new to our channel, is an amazing city on the western part of Kenya, which is where my home is. But I live in a small village called Karateng, somewhere in the middle of Kisumu. So today, or this evening, we're out here to take a delivery of a Toyota truck that'll be mostly used in the village. So what you're going to watch in the next couple of minutes is what we describe as post-delivery inspection of the truck before it heads out the village. And I always insist to my clients, whether we're doing construction or anything to be purchased, please make sure you verify that what you paid for is what you're receiving before you're done with the seller. Because a lot of the times, sellers in Kenya will not listen to you after you have left their premises. So for this particular crowd, we're going to spend about 10-15 minutes doing a post-delivery inspection. And we're simply making certain, again, that what was paid for is what is going to be delivered. And so far, everything checked out except for maybe one of the reverse lights. And it's a simple fix, just a matter of replacing a bulb. The most annoying part, as you saw earlier in the video, is that they delivered a truck with almost no gas in it. Many dealers actually will give you a truck with some amount of gas. There are others who will actually fill up your truck before you take off. These folks, unfortunately, did not fill it up. And so we were not sure that this truck could even leave the parking lot. That's why we had to send somebody to bring us some diesel. But when I say that everything checked out during the pre-inspection process, I'm just talking about the basic things that anybody can do on their own. Things that don't have to require some kind of expertise or a mechanic to do, like just getting a sense of the overall engine condition, checking to make sure there are no leaks underneath the hood, no unusual sounds, no unusual smells, no scratches, no dents. The lights seem to be in good condition. Nothing appears switched. Unfortunately, this does happen, that sometimes between the point of purchase and the point of delivery, some unscrupulous dealers can actually switch parts. So you want to make sure that what you saw at the time you're purchasing the car is exactly what you're getting at the time of delivery. So we're just making sure that nothing has been tampered with. And then, of course, you're looking at just the basic accessible parts of a car, like brakes, steering, the gear shift, the windows, the wipers, that all those seem to function just fine. And I'm not saying this is a big deal. The thing is, if some of the basic things in a car are problematic, it might be an indicator that you're looking at bigger problems. And that's why usually at the post-delivery inspection, we start with the basics. If there's a problem with the basics, then yes, now I need to bring in one of my mechanics to do like a thorough inspection. And then you check whether you have the spare tire where it's supposed to be, and then the tools for changing it, because unfortunately sometimes those can be taken out. And you will not know, because oftentimes new buyers are so excited, they don't even realize that their toolbox is gone or their jacks are gone. So you want to check that to make sure it's in place. And then most importantly, check to make sure that the VIN numbers match the paperwork. And in many cars, you'll find the VIN number in at least 3 parts. You'll find the VIN number in the engine block, you'll find it somewhere around the door, and then you'll find it somewhere on the chassis. You want to make sure it's the same VIN number and it doesn't seem tampered with, because that's usually one of the most obvious indicators that you're actually purchasing a stolen car. When there's some tampering with the VIN number, chances are you're buying a stolen car. And that car may have not been stolen in Kenya. It could have been stolen somewhere outside Kenya, then they sell it within. So check to make sure that all the VIN numbers match and they line up with the paperwork. And then I know many folks have been asking me questions about purchasing, maintenance, and storage of cars in Kenya, especially for returnees. I'll do a separate video on that later on. I'm happy to do that, but today I want us to specifically focus on navigating Kenyan roads for returnees. Now, all current and future returnees at some point grapple with the need to move around. This is a basic human need that applies to both Kenyan diasporans or other Kenyans who just live in Kenya. At some point, you have to move from point A to point B. Unfortunately, however, public transportation is often very challenging for folks who have lived abroad. When folks come back, they realize that some of the things that seemed very normal when they were here are no longer normal. And I'm talking about some of the conveniences. If you're used to driving your personal car and then you have to come to Kenya and rely on public transportation, it's quite a shift. You can do it. Sometimes I do it mostly for fun, but it can be really challenging, especially when you have kids or when you have to purchase different things at different spots. Public transportation in Kenya may not always be ideal. And then you're worrying about safety issues, because I've seen cases where drivers in public vehicles fall asleep, or sometimes they drive drunk, and all kinds of things that happen. So there are real safety issues that you may have to worry about. And then issues of accessibility. No public vehicle will stop by your door unless your home is right by the main door. And so, yes, there are many inconveniences that come with public transportation in Kenya, as opposed to where many of us live abroad. So that leaves returnees with about three options. Number one, returnees have the options of renting a car. Many actually depend on family, whether it means borrowing a car from a family or having a family member to chauffeur you around. And then a lot of other folks simply buy cars and use at home. But whichever option a person picks, you either have to drive yourself or get somebody to drive you. Many people drive themselves because the cost of hiring a driver can be prohibitive, especially if you are an average person. Some people can afford it, and that's okay. Many of us, myself included, I cannot afford to hire a driver in Kenya. So either way, whatever option you pick, you have to be prepared for some of the benefits and the drawbacks. For example, car rental in Kenya can be really expensive, especially if you're going to stay in Kenya for an extended period of time. I remember the last time I hired a car, and this was many years ago. I think it was like over 3,000 shillings a day. And it was a very small, low car that was very inconvenient. I'm sure now it's probably a lot more than that. And besides just the cost, many of the rental cars that I've used are often very poorly managed or maintained. And so you get a car, you hit the road, next thing you know, you have a lot of mechanical issues, you have very used tires, and then you have to survive the entire time with a terrible car at your own cost, unfortunately. So rental cars can be a nightmare. Sometimes it works okay. Now, if you're going to depend on families, whether they're just lending you their car or driving around, I say that this option works best for people who have normal family members. Now, remember, a lot of returnees don't have normal family members. And so if you know your family is not normal, please don't rely on them to donate their cars or to drive you around. Otherwise, you're going to have a very long time in Kenya if you are depending on family members of that sort. Now, either way, here are some things that I would recommend you think about if you're going to drive or use cars in Kenya. Number one, that left-right thing issue is a major problem. Some of us live in countries where we drive on the right. When you come to Kenya, it's the reverse. So you want to be careful at intersections, because this is where you're more likely to enter the wrong side of the road. Again, don't follow border borders. Those guys do pretty much whatever they want, and they're always wrong, so don't follow them. Now, while driving on the road, please drive as if you're the only person who is sane on the road. So it's okay to let others win. There is nothing for you to win. Let them win, let them go. And then, if at all possible, minimize your driving when you're still jet lagged, because you'll fall asleep and bad things happen. Never leave your drink unattended at a new joint, especially in some of these towns that have problems with what they call mchele. And now I'll explain what that means in a different video. Now, also remember, don't get into a fight with matatus and boda guys. You will not win. If at all possible, avoid any fights involving those folks. Now, while driving in Kenya, courage is everything on the road. Yeah, it'll take you a long way. Also, remember, don't give police officers eye contact. If you see them waving, assume they're stopping the person behind you and keep going. Some cars are usually what I call police magnets. So if you can avoid these cars, especially I'm talking about things like Probox, Toyota Probox, single cab trucks, and commercial looking vans. Typically, they will attract unnecessary attention from police, and they'll always be out looking for ways to extort money from you. And then, for the most part in Kenya, money solves almost all problems. So don't panic. If something happens, you may need to have money exchange hands and you move on. That's just how it is. It's sad, but it's the reality. Now, there's something called body language. I tell folks, learn what that is in Kenya, meaning sometimes on the road, you have to make up rules as you go. You observe people doing whatever they're doing, and then you respond accordingly. You may end up doing what is actually against traffic rules because you are acting in relation to the body language of other folks. So learn to read body language and act accordingly. Now, if you hire or buy a Japanese car, there are many folks who will help you switch the language from Japanese to Kenyan, because half the time the Japanese cars, like the one you're looking at right now, comes preloaded everything in Japanese, and you may not even be able to use the music. So there are many folks who are really good at switching all that. So yeah, get help. We're happy to help with that. Now, besides that, remember many cars in Kenya have a kill switch to it, and they call it a cutout. So before you hit the road with a car that is new, please check if they have a kill switch and how it works. Because sometimes there are cars that have more than one kill switch. So if you just hit the road driving without checking, I'm telling you, your car is going to stall right in the middle of the highway, and you're going to have a very long day. So check to make sure you know how it works, if at all you're driving a car with a kill switch. And then please make sure your insurance is up to date. A lot of insurance in Kenya don't even notify you that your insurance has elapsed. And oftentimes you won't even realize until you're stopped by police. And of course, you're going to have to pay handsomely to get out of that kind of a situation. So please check your insurance to make sure it's all up to date. And then, of course, avoid unnecessary hurry. Because a lot of the roads you're going to drive on are two-way streets, where the only way to overtake somebody is to cross the double line. So be patient or cross safely when you can. Now, the other thing I say is avoid driving in the rain, especially at night. Many roads are poorly lit, so you won't see too well. And a lot of the cars I've used in Kenya actually have very terrible lights. And then to make it even worse, a lot of cars have tinting on the sides or even on the windshield. So with a tint, poor lighting, and then poorly lit roads, it's just a recipe for disaster. So if it's raining, please avoid driving at night when it rains. But I know sometimes you don't have a choice because you are coming back home. There's no place to stop. Just avoid that when you can. Now, anywhere you drive in Kenya, especially roads that are new to you, expect surprise holes, surprise bumps that are not often marked. There may be people just popping up in the road. There may be animals, and there may even be ghosts somewhere. In Kenya, they talk of blind spots. Not blind spot. They call them what spots? Something spot, which are dangerous zones where you'll hear stories that, oh, there's some random woman that just pops and jumps into the road. So I've never seen a ghost, but I've heard all kinds of stories about ghosts. So expect things like that while you're driving. All it simply means is that you want to be extra careful. And it means you have to be 3,000% alert every single time. So you cannot afford to slack off. So folks, have a safe Christmas holiday, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you. Bye.